There's an author. He's more than an author. His name is Leon Aaron. He's the author of a book called Yeltsin, obviously about Boris Yeltsin. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, the sine qua non of capitalism in this country. I don't like what the American Enterprise Institute issues when they issue their papers, but what the hell? Right now, Leon Aaron is writing a book about Vladimir Putin's road to Ukraine and beyond. So again, just like my so-called relationship with Max Boot, who is a columnist for the Washington Post and whose political ideas, both foreign and domestic, have been an irritation to me for the past 30 years. But his strong stance against fascism, at least American fascism, and European fascism, is what has brought me around to pay attention to what Max Boot says. Well, the same thing now applies for me with Leon Aaron. And he points out that no matter what the outcome of what Putin has done with this attack on Ukraine, no matter what the outcome, it's bad news for Putin and his regime. Aaron says that neither taking Kyiv or declaring victory or beginning peace negotiations are going to save Putin from the serious, if not fatal, domestic repercussions of what he's done, if not fatal. Here's why. As this slaughter in Ukraine, and it's referred to, of course, as a war, it is not a war. This is an invasion, a slaughter, a war crime. But as it drags on, Aaron says the danger to Putin will come chiefly from three quarters. First, from the oligarchs, who just will not tolerate seeing their flow of money, billions into their pockets, cut off. The military, for obvious reasons, and those people whom we call ordinary Russians, the ones who try to live in Kyiv on the equivalent of, $1,000 a month. I don't know how they do it. But the oligarchs stand to lose the most from what the rest of the world is doing to this little runt, Putin. The oligarchs have been publicly cautious. They haven't stepped out yet and said, hey, stop the shit, Vladimir. You're interfering with our money. But whatever their true sentiments are, they haven't come out and said it yet. I can guarantee you, I don't know any of these fuckers, and I don't ever want to, but I can guarantee you that they don't like what is happening, what Putin has done, because it's interfered with their cash flow. That's why. Some of these oligarchs have left Russia ever since the arrest. If you remember the guy, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, back in 2003, I'd completely forgotten that, but it's mentioned in this article. He was a Russian oligarch who got a little bit too, I wouldn't even say critical, a little bit too questioning of Putin, and he had to leave the country or he would have been killed by Putin. And aside from Mikhail Khodorkovsky, others of these oligarchs appear to be reconciled to managing their companies on behalf of the state rather than being the masters of their companies, and which means nothing in terms of the money that goes into their pockets. Now, of the four who have registered mild concern about what the runt Putin has done so far, three did so from London. Goddamn sure not Moscow, right? They are Mikhail Friedman, Roman Abramovich, and Oleg Tinkov. All three of whom are possibly Jewish. I know two of them are. But only one, Oleg Deripaska, made a comment from Moscow. And all point to the tragedy of the war and call for peace without blaming Putin. And only Tinkov said explicitly said he opposes the war. Now, this is difficult for some of these people who happen to be Jews, and President Zelensky is a Jew, and Zelensky is displaying the kind of courage and forceful action that people like Trump could only wet their pants over when they saw it. Zelensky is a leader. And this is a reality, whether we want to talk about it or not. But because he is a Jew, some of the oligarchs in Russia, who also happen to be Jews, are put in a very difficult situation. You can understand. I hope you can understand. So only Oleg Tinkov explicitly said that he opposes the war. And again, he said it from London. I would, if I were any one of these people, I would hesitate about going back to Moscow as long as Putin is there. Now, the next group, throughout Russian history, the military has generally stayed away from politics, with one exception from history, a December revolt in 1825, about which I know zero. I just know that it occurred. I'm trying to remember the circumstances, but it's predated by almost 100 years, the Russian Revolution. But anyway, but like other dictators and autocrats, Putin has had ample opportunity to choose his top officers for their loyalty, not their capability, just like Trump. And when you're an autocratic fucker like Putin or Trump, you choose people specifically who are going to be your yes men or yes women, do exactly as the dictator says, with the full understanding that they can dip into the money as it flows past them and take as much as they want. Putin's Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, has no military background at all. He's a civil engineer who was, according to this, was Minister of Emergency Situations until Putin put him in charge of the country's armed forces. That's what Trump, you notice that this is fucking exactly what Trump did when he got reelected. I'm sorry, when he was running for reelection. He put people in key positions who were toadies, who would have filleted him on the steps of the Capitol had he said, "You do it now, or you're going to be off my list." So, what Putin does, Trump does. What Trump does, Putin does, to a certain degree. I mean, Trump never had the kind of authority that Putin has. And Trump had to operate his attempt to overthrow the government within the framework of a liberal democracy, a constitutional democracy. And there is no rule of law in Russia anymore. There is no independent judiciary. There is no independent media. And then you have ordinary Russians. They've already been arrested by the thousands now for protesting this war. But the majority of citizens are almost certain to rally around Putin at first, like they did after Putin's first attack on Ukraine back in 2014 when Crimea disappeared. And Putin clearly is hoping that this effect on the older Russians will last until the March 2024 presidential election. And Putin will be 71 then, and he'll likely try to embark on a presidency for life, like Trump wanted. I mean, these two scum bastards, Trump and Putin, exactly the same. They just operate in different political frameworks. Now, it's impossible for any expert to try to predict. This happens in this country all the time vis-a-vis our involvement in Vietnam. But the Russians or the Soviet Union's quagmire in Afghanistan, people don't seem to remember that. Those coffins and unmarked graves. So, and which was instrumental the resistance to what the Russians were doing in Afghanistan, and even after they pulled out, all the young Russian men, Soviet men, coming home in coffins, that helped bring down and dismember the Soviet Union as much as anything else. Gorbachev, realpolitik, Afghanistan. So the question is, when are the Russian people going to feel the same resentment and then anger and then mass protests? The protests have begun. As soon as the Russian people understand what's happening. I mean, Ukraine is not halfway around the world. Ukrainians and Russians, they're cousins, they're brothers and sisters, they're intermarried. Ukrainians live in Russia, Russians live in Ukraine. Dear God. What Putin has done is like the United States under Trump being ordered to attack Canada. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.